Last week, I told you that I'd be interviewing Fran Brill this week. Fran Brill, who, not counting Jane Henson, was the first female puppeteer Jim ever hired. Look, you know I usually talk a lot before the theme song, and then sometimes I talk even more before I bring in my guest. I won't do that today. I know why you're here, and it's not to hear me talk about licensed socks again. You can hear me do that next week. But to reiterate, Fran Brill is crucial to understanding the history of female puppeteers and female Muppets on Sesame Street. As we discussed in episode 1 of this show, in the very early days of the Muppets, Jane Henson was a true partner to Jim, building the cast of Sam and Friends and performing alongside him. At first, she was the only other puppeteer. Then Jim would hire Bob Payne and Jerry Jewell, and then Frank Oz, and, well, I'm repeating myself. But like we said, Jane was busy raising a family during season 1 of Sesame Street. While Jim had hired Carol Lee Wilcox, she was predominantly a puppet builder, not a puppeteer, so her times performing are few and far between. As we've seen, in season 1 of Sesame Street, many of the female Muppets, many of which were, of course, mostly just Betty Lou with different names, were performed by Frank Oz. Don't get me wrong, Frank is an amazing puppeteer, but characters are almost always going to feel more genuine when they're played by someone with similar experiences. That's where Fran Brill comes in. I won't tell her story for her, not when you're already champing at the bit to hear from her. And yeah, that's champing at the bit, not chomping at the bit. Let me explain the difference for a second. So champing... Oh, okay, right. I'm not going to take as long as usual. Let's get things started with a very special episode of A Prairie Dawn Companion.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Starlight Hotel takes great pride in presenting the world's favorite 6-year-old entertainer, Miss Prairie Dawn. Come on, girls. Let's go do girl stuff. Yeah, girl stuff.
Can you play a song with a beat?
So, I want to start by talking a little bit about, the early days and how you joined up with the Henson team. And it's a story that you've told a couple times.
A couple.
I was trying to be nice.
The whole world. Yeah. No.
You saw an ad in the paper for Henson performers, and
yeah, right.
And you applied. And apparently you spoke to Jim Henson directly when you applied?
Yes, this would never happen today. But when I came to New York with the Broadway show, and the show closed very rapidly. It really wasn't right for Broadway. It was a transference of a show from a regional theater. We opened in a snowstorm and it closed very rapidly, but hey, I got to New York. So I saw an ad in Backstage, which is, or was, I don't know if it exists anymore, one of those periodicals, for actors trying to get jobs. And I had been watching Sesame Street because when I came with this show from Atlanta, actually, I watched it to cheer myself up, and I watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood because now I was just an actress like everybody else, struggling to earn some money and get work and all of that business. So and they were paying you to take this workshop. So I really did it just as a goof, because I thought, oh, these are people, they must be cool, Anyway, so I got accepted into this workshop after going through several times of auditioning. There were a few of us left over, and we did this Ed Sullivan Christmas special with Art Carney. And out of that group, Jim asked Richard Hunt and me if we wanted to do Sesame Street in the fall. I think we shot that in the summertime. So I thought, I don't know, this was a fun thing, but I really wanted to be an actress. And he said, well, we'll just work around your schedule. I mean, he was crazy. He understood because, when you really want to go left, but somebody's going, hey, right is pretty good over here. It's hard to make a decision. So he just, it was very easy. He said, just try it, see what you. So anyway, that's really how I ended up on Sesame Street. And yes, all the female characters, if they wrote them, were played by the guys, who just went into their falsetto, which to me is even funnier, just to hear a man try to get it up there. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, basically, so it wasn't, it wasn't like, and I'm pretty sure you've said this before too, but it wasn't like you weren't actively setting out to become a puppeteer or anything like that. It was just a job that seemed like it could be fun, and you joined. So at the time, on Sesame Street, especially in that, when you eventually started there, and by my records, it looks like that would have been like season two in 1970.
Was because the first air showed in November of 69.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then it was on, of course it wasn't on all year, but the next fall was 70-71.
Yeah.
That's when I joined up, which seems like a really long time ago. And it was.
I wasn't gonna say that. I wasn't gonna say that.
I'll say it.
But was it odd because at the time you were basically the only female puppeteer on the show. There were some women in the workshop, but not really much in the way of female puppeteers. So what was that experience like? Was it, I mean, maybe it was not you, maybe you didn't even notice, but what was it like?
I did really. I just loved it. First of all, I just loved all the guys, and I've always liked men and being around men, and almost more than women. But that's not true now because I have a lot of fabulous women friends, and that would be very unfair. But I was very comfortable. So whatever they would throw at me, I would just bounce it right back to them, and it wasn't a problem. It wasn't them against me. It just changed in a way their dynamic. If all of a sudden you throw something else into this company of five guys, so it just changed it up a little bit, but just wasn't that big a deal.
Sure. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
Do
Oh, and
so
then one day, after doing right hands and stuff like that, Jim did come up to me one day and said, and with this little teeny tiny puppet, who I have up there.
Yeah, I can see her up there.
When I retired, they were very nice and gave me my own Prairie Dawn in an acrylic box with the arm wires even in her hands. So I can take her out, but I have not. It's just I have to
Yeah.
get her out and get up there and yeah. Unless somebody paid me a lot of money.
Sure, sure.
No, I wouldn't do that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, that was basically it. And like, so season two, I've been going back and doing some reading and stuff. Season two, you were on the show a bunch, mostly as Betty Lou, and we'll talk a little bit about Betty Lou in a second. But then after season two, from like 71 to 1990, you appeared a lot more sporadically on the show.
Yeah, because to me, this was just a little lark, and I never meant to do it full time at all. So that's when I was busy doing theater, theater, commercials, plays. I just wanted to keep my theatrical career alive since I never really wanted to be a puppeteer. So sometimes they worked their schedule around me a little bit, like they would just do inserts in the summertime. So Jim would call and he would say, "Okay, we've written scripts for Prairie Dawn. Are you available the week of blah blah blah?" And then I would shoot some of that stuff. So he couldn't have been more wonderful in terms of letting me kind of keep all of these plates going.
How is working, besides the obvious thing, how is working on, those sets, like the commercial sets and the theater sets, different than working on Sesame? Besides the obvious thing, there were puppets on Sesame Street.
Oh,
That's
very.
one thing.
I wouldn't even put them in the same field. Being a puppeteer is so difficult and so different that I, I I really wouldn't even be able to find the same thing to relate to with acting or uh, you know, they're just different skills. They are performances, but they use different parts of you, is what I would say. But they're definitely separate in my own mind.
Sure. So let's get into talking a little bit about some of the characters. And as we talk, obviously if other things from your life story come up as part of that, I'd love to hear it. But, so figure we'll start with the big one, which is Prairie Dawn. Again, my favorite. You've got a ton of Prairie Dawn stuff behind you. When you were first presented with Prairie Dawn, what did you have in mind for her as a character? Did you have anything in mind for her as a character?
The first thing that happened is that Jim walked across the studio floor holding up this little puppet one day, and he said, we've got this little girl, a puppet, and do you want to see what you can do with her? It was real loosey-goosey. And so she's so small. I mean, really tiny compared to the boys, the Oscar and Cookie Monster and Ernie and Bert. So I just went up right here, just sort of and he said he wanted her to be very sweet. So, I sort of gagged at that one. And but anyway, so I tried, so I put her up here and I made her sort of wispy voiced, and that's the way she was for a long time. And then she got a lot more courageous, and so some of the wispier stuff went out, but I always kept her voice up here because she was a 6-year-old little girl.
I think that balance between, the sort of sweetness of Prairie Dawn and, like you said, that courageousness that started to sort of come out is really what makes her such an interesting character to me. And, was that, I guess that was a conscious decision to sort of bring that out, and her, like her sort of leadership stuff and her type A personality and stuff, I feel like took a while to come out, but was that a conscious decision on your part?
Well, not really. That was because the early scripts had her kind of, she's just a sweet little girl. But then I don't know who wrote a pageant for Prairie Dawn, and I guess it was around the same time they decided Prairie could play the piano. So, and badly, of course, she had to play it badly. So, the Dave Connor, who was our wonderful singing person, would always be playing wrong notes because it was very hard for Prairie to read the music, sing, and, look at the keyboard. So all of that stuff got to be pretty funny and clever, and we loved it. And then they wrote things like pageants, and the pageants were all these boys, who were kind of doofuses at doing this sort of thing. And Prairie became very, no, 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 that's not right. Let's do it again. And that gave her, she was I hate to say she was full of herself. She became a very secure little 6-year-old girl who didn't run into the corner, or something and cry. And I think that's what made her funny, is because she was so small, smaller than any of the other characters, and yet she had a lot of confidence.
Oh, welcome, dear viewer, to our little play. We're ever so glad that you joined us today. And now it is time for our drama to start. Whoops, for here comes a young man who calls himself Bart.
Well, actually, I'm Ernie. I'm not Bart at all. But in this play, I'm pretending to be Bart
Ernie,
just
what are
because
you
that was the
doing?
way it was written
Shh.
when.
Just do your lines.
Oh, yes.
Do you have a favorite memory of performing her?
Ah, yike.
That's okay if you don't.
No, I
No, you
mean,
hated all of it. You hated all of it. I'm gonna write that down.
oh, not quite. No, let's see the favorite. Well, I did love doing the pageants because it gave me a lot to do because the boys, the characters were always very sort of surly, like, oh God, she's written another pageant. We've got to be. And they would trudge on stage as, you know, spring or summer or whatever, if it was about the seasons. So that's always fun when you've got an opposite thing going on. But a favorite one. Oh, well, yes, because when she decided that she could probably produce movies and possibly run the network at some point, they wrote this fun stuff for her, like Singing in the Rain. Are you familiar with that one?
Of course I am.
Okay, well, I love that one because it did teach about weather and stuff, but she, she got very rattled by the fact that everything was going the wrong way.
All right, people.
This way.
I don't blame you. I do not blame you. People, can we get this right or we're going to be here all day? All right. Now, I'm going to say action. And this time I want to see rain. Lots of nice, wet rain.
Thank you.
Lights.
All right.
Get out of my seat or
Here
I'll
we go.
fire you.
Here we go. Here we go.
Honestly. Camera.
But Singing in the Rain, take 3.
And action.
And the writers liked that. They liked writing stuff for her that would be challenging, that here's this tiny little girl, but she thinks she's a director. It's the opposite stuff. It's like when somebody puts on a big puppet of a man, let's say, and yet there's a voice up here, that gets you a laugh, or vice versa, a small puppet with a booming voice. So that's what you kind of look for when you're doing that job.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm glad you mentioned Singing in the Rain, because one of the things that I always really enjoyed pretty much from Singing in the Rain forward was the stuff that you did with Frank's characters, with Grover and Cookie. And I think there was such a fun dynamic of Grover and Cookie kind of being very wild and chaotic, and Prairie getting increasingly frustrated with them. That was always very fun and always kind of reminded me of the stuff that Jim and Frank would do with Kermit and Cookie and Kermit and Grover. I don't know if that was like an influence or if it was just another fun window that you found.
It's just Frank.
That makes sense.
In between takes would be very funny with her, just super funny. He would look under her skirt and I would say, yes, it's Tuesday, because little girls back then sometimes had panties that had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on them. So that became sort of a little running gag that he would do in between takes and peek under and say, oh, it's Wednesday anyway. Yeah, there was a lot of comedy that never was shot because it happens in between takes. But I remember one that I thought was very clever was Monster Piece Theater. Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay. And Frank always, Alistair Cookie, and then he did some with Prairie, and I remember one of them was well, I guess it was Little House on the Prairie.
Yes.
Waka Waka.
Yeah.
So we did that, and just I don't know, the writers were just fantastic at that time. It was a different time. It was just, I mean, they're very good too now, but the whole show has changed a lot, from the good old days. But that's what happens. New producers, the times are changing, stuff like that. So it's, now it's sort of virtuous. There's a puppet for every problem. I call it, what did I come up with? Oh, puppets with a purpose.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear some of your, I mean, I guess you kind of already said that, but like did you feel the show was changing while you were on it still? Because obviously you retired, a few years ago, about 10 years ago, right? But did you feel like the show was changing from the 70s, through the 90s and 2000s?
Well, what happened is that with every executive producer we would get, they wanted to change the show, because that's why they were hired to come in, make changes. So season 25, it all moved outdoors. There was laundromat, there was a fix-it shop, and it was all around the set because that was that producer's idea. And so I don't know, it constantly changes. And now it's, really different, really, really different. So, and I may change even more in this coming year when it just was announced that Netflix is going to produce the show.
We're recording this for folks at home. We're recording this the day after it was announced that Sesame would be moving to Netflix.
Yeah, because everybody thought this might be the end. Yeah. So that was, great that this has happened. And I knew Sherry Rollins, the executive producer, would find somebody. The question was when. So that's been a good day for Sesame Street, because I actually thought, oh my goodness, is it going to go off the air after I don't even know how many seasons it is now? It's way past 55. I don't know.
It's like 56.
56, right? That's probably season 56. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. No. This is great. This is exactly what I wanted. Let's actually move to a character who you might have less to say about, but we'll see. We actually the week before this on the podcast, we talked a bunch about Betty Lou. And you're laughing already. It feels like there isn't really that much to say about Betty Lou.
It's supposed to be just another, unless you have a reason for a puppet, but they just, oh, well, I guess we need another puppet. So I ended up doing both puppets, which is, a loony, but it's all a process. And Betty Lou was like the same puppet, but with a different hairdo.
Yeah.
And her voice was a little lower, than Prairie's. It wasn't quite so winsome. And, the basic thing was, oh yeah, Prairie Dawn is the one with the page boy and Betty Lou is the one with the pigtails. And they merchandised them like that in books and for, Sesame Street books and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I did both of them, so
Do you have any thoughts and memories on her, or just, sort of like, I feel like you didn't even perform her for that long, certainly compared to Prairie. It was just, hey, I might as well ask, since we were talking about some of those old sketches you did and some of the songs you did with her, like a Vowel Family song, but not a ton.
Oh boy.
You want to do this now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go.
He take an R, that's R.
And an A-N-N.
You put them all together and they spell ran. That's ran, R-A-N, ran.
That's ran, R-A-N, ran.
You take an R, that's R.
And an A-N-N.
You put them all together and they spell ran. I'm gonna get another one now.
Okay, here we go. Oh, this was lots of fun.
No, the other female character was Roxy.
Roxy. Yes, Roxy Marie.
And I loved Roxy Marie.
I actually wanted to talk to you a little bit about Roxy Marie because she was one of my favorites when I was little. I was a kid when she and Zoe were on. And we'll obviously get to Zoe, but Roxy was fun, and I loved the accent you did for Roxy.
Yeah, she was New York, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Because she was Biff's niece,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the way Jerry did Biff. So I figured, and Biff was a little slow, but Roxy loved him and would never want to hurt his feelings or anything like that. So they wrote some really sweet scripts for them.
Hey, Uncle Biff.
Hey, Roxy, what's going on here?
Oh, I'm just working on my geography homework.
Ooh, geography. That's maps and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like this here,
Globe.
globe, yeah. You know, Rox, your Uncle Biff was a geography ace when he was your age.
And I also said, hey, we don't have anybody here who wears glasses. And why don't we have a puppet? So, yeah, I don't know why Roxy. I think then we got to a period at Sesame Workshop where they said there's too many characters. The children need to focus on a handful of characters. So all of these other characters who could have been terrific, were just not written for because they concentrated on the leading, females and the leading males. But I just loved the relationship she had with Sully, her uncle. And it's just what happens, nothing stays the same in a show like that with new directors and producers and writers coming in.
So actually, that does take me talking about Roxy a little bit to, the 90s. And we already mentioned the Singing in the Rain sketch with Prairie. And obviously the big thing you did in the 90s was Zoe, who we'll get to in a second, but that's, that was such a huge change the show made in the 90s. But I guess the first question is was there any particular reason why you came back and started doing the show more in the 90s? Because it felt like in the 90s, Zoe was on basically every episode, and there was a bunch of Prairie still, not as much as Zoe, but a bunch of Prairie. Any particular reason you came back to doing it more regularly?
Yes, the fork in the road. At that point in the 90s, I had gone back to acting quite a bit and doing movies and blah, blah, blah. And I had nothing whatsoever to do with Sesame Street during that time. And then one day I got this phone call from Michael Lohman, who was the new producer. I hadn't even met him yet. And he said, hi, Fran, it's Michael Lohman. And so he kind of made an offer that I couldn't refuse. He just said, we want you to create not exactly a female version of Elmo, but Elmo's best friend. She would be a monster. She would be 3 years old. At that point, I think they had a drawing of her, and she became orange simply because there were at least two, if not three, blue characters. There was no idea about merchandising or anything at that time. They just sort of said, well, Elmo needs a best friend, and she's gonna be a girl. And so I had nothing to go on except this drawing. The puppet designer at that time had designed, and her face was very, very wide, like, really wide. And they just said, that's it. We just want you to create a character. So I did improvise some with Elmo just to find out who she was, because I had no idea who she was, nothing to go on except this big mouth. So when I first started, I sort of was doing like Carol Channing, because Carol
Sure.
Channing, well, she has such a weird voice, but at any rate, I just took that from what she looked like. And then when I got to the set, it was so exhausting to do the voice of Carol Channing there that I mean, I literally came on that set the first day so nervous because I really didn't have a character for her. All I knew is that they wanted her to be very upbeat and fun and play with the boys, and that's just not enough, So I really found out who she was when I improvised with Kevin.
Yeah.
That helped a lot. So, um, no, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so basically you came back explicitly for
After Jim
Zoe.
died.
Hmm?
That's when Jim passed away, which is in 93, I think it was 92,
90 actually, but
90.
yeah.
Okay. That's when they pulled me back in, and I thought about it and I said, you know what? This is for Jim. I've got to come back and do this for him because he would have wanted me to do that. So, I don't know. I came back, and they also just made it more appealing for me, and that's all.
Sure. So how did playing Zoe compare to playing Prairie and some of the other older characters?
Um, well, by then Prairie was pretty well established in my mind, and they pretty much told me what they wanted from Zoe, that they wanted her to be, play with the boys and happy-go-lucky and not necessarily loud, but I don't know. And really, the scripts are what kind of led me to the character too, because I saw her doing certain things, and she was more of a tomboy back then, I think. But I mean, you hate to label these people
Sure.
anymore. She was the opposite of Prairie, who carried a hanky when they first made Prairie Dawn. She carried a hanky and she wore those smock dresses, and you couldn't get more girly than that. So they wanted me to, just sort of do the opposite thing with Zoe.
Wait!
What?
I know! Co-poppertate.
Coop. Oh, I know. You mean cooperate. You said cooperate.
Don't joke me! I mean cooperate.
And how was it different just sort of like being in so many episodes and stuff with Zoe and because again, like I said, she was in everything when I was little in the 90s.
I guess so. I mean, it's hard to remember, but she seems to me they wrote a lot of scripts for her. Yeah. Um, one of my favorite scripts for her, in case you want to
I was
know,
actually
was
gonna
they wrote.
ask. Look at you predicting my questions.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I was, she had something called a Zoe Mobile, which was great. I loved it. And it was very difficult to perform in because I was all scrunched up in this little car with my arm coming out of the top. But it was a cool thing for her to have. And she loved driving it. And it was a great idea. And then they wrote a show where Telly Telly and Elmo wanted to take a ride. They wanted to borrow the car and take a ride in it. And she was very cautious about that. She wasn't crazy about the idea, but she thought that she should be a good egg and let them drive the car. Well, they crashed it. I don't know if you saw that. And it just was heartbreaking for her. And they promised her they would fix it up and all of this stuff. But it gave Zoe this wonderful thing of her being just devastated, and crying and sorrow. You never saw a puppet do that. But it was a good learning thing because she sort of, I guess the teachable moment was that, they would fix it. Nobody died. And, um, and everything would be okay again, and to still care for your friends because they didn't mean to wreck it. So, it was one of my favorite shows with her because she was really upset too. So,
My, my Zoe mobile! My beautiful Zoe mobile! Oh,
Zoe, Zoe, are you okay?
no! I feel really, really sad.
So do I.
It was an accident, Zoe. It just rolled away.
My poor Zoe mobile!
Oh, boy. Zoe.
yeah, it's other than, or anger, it was great. I mean, I actually got weepy doing it because I don't know, I was her. And it was a sweet show. But that's the only one that stands out in my mind.
Yeah, I mean,
right now.
I have to ask, and I'm sure you've been asked a ton about this lately because it feels like all of a sudden everyone started paying attention to this again. But the stuff you did with Kevin, with Zoe and Rocco is just so funny.
Oh,
Zoe and Elmo and Rocco was always so funny, and I was a lot of that ad-libbed, or like, I guess, were you? I mean, I know obviously there were scripts. I know how the show works, but
it was, first of all, we have to commend Joey Mazzarino. He's the one that decided that Zoe would have a pet rock, and he named it Rocco. So, I love Joey's writing always. His shows were so great. And so giving her this stupid rock, which she, loved so much. And I don't know. I mean, I think she pretended, that Rocco talked and stuff like that, but she was a bit manipulative with Rocco. But the scripts he wrote were just hysterical with Elmo. So we had a great time with those. And I don't know, I loved her having this sticky kind of thing, of carrying Rocco around and making people do, well, no, Rocco doesn't want to play on the swings right now. Rocco wants to go be a clown,
yes.
stuff like that. It was great opportunities.
I'm playing with Rocco. Hello, Rocco. Hey, Elmo, could you please watch Rocco for a minute?
Any other, memories or things you want to add? I do want to get into some other general questions, but just as long as we're on the characters, any other characters you feel like you want to talk about, or
I always thought it would be fun to have Zoe and Prairie talk to each other, but that really doesn't work.
it would be fun, but yeah, I guess that would be a little difficult. You'd have to do like dubbing and stuff.
For sure.
So we were talking a little bit about this off mic, and but one of the things that kind of I'm thinking a lot about with this show is why it took Sesame so long to get a female character that was really like as important as the male characters. Because obviously Prairie and Betty were around, in 1970, and all of this, but it really wasn't until Zoe, and then definitely when Abby comes around in like 2006 or whatever, then it's really cemented. But before that, there really wasn't a female Muppet who was standing on par with the boys. And I'm curious if you have any sort of insight or thoughts into that, because obviously no one has more experience with this than you. So
Well, I think what happened is it was the 90s, and I think people were saying, where are the female characters? And it's all boys. And I know Dulcie Singer was the producer at the time, and it was the women's movement, and all sorts of things like that. And it's like, why are there just male characters here? So that's really how Prairie got on the air. Uh, and because Prairie, I don't know. I mean, I got my decades mixed up a little, but certainly the 90s
yeah.
were Zoe. And that's because we had this new producer, and he just said, we need to have more female characters. I think
Yep.
Rosita may have appeared around that time, or
About two
maybe a
years
little
earlier than
later.
Zoe, but it was close.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
I know. This all
Hey,
runs together. I can't imagine. This is just because I just looked this stuff up because I was prepping for this.
he did. You researched.
Yeah,
I
no,
have just
exactly.
my
You're
memory
fine.
to go.
But yeah, so it would have been around the same time. And like you were saying, like we were saying, Prairie really started to appear more, I feel like, in the 90s as well. Before that, you were on the albums a lot. And I can see you have a gold record over there. I'm not sure which one that's for, but
I think it might have been Muppet Show because there's a
so
British
it might have been for the
flag up
Muppet Show.
there.
But still, obviously Prairie was on the albums a lot. But in the 70s and 80s, pageants and occasionally the game show sketches, which were always so funny. What's Prairie's problem and the triangle is right and all of that. But it was really in the 90s. And yeah, so you're saying kind of like the producers were thinking about the women's movement and stuff, and that just wasn't on their mind as much in the 70s and 80s, I guess.
I don't think so because they were all
Yeah,
men.
that's
You know, why would they think they needed a female? It's just typical in a
sure.
way.
I
I mean, I don't chastise them for it, but they had male puppeteers. So the male puppeteers did everything. And then I think people started saying, where are the female characters? And uh Dulcie Singer at that point just said, Fran, I don't know. It's somewhere in there.
sure.
That's how that happened. It just became obvious that they were all males and they wanted the real thing. They wanted a woman who did
Yeah.
a female character.
What do you think Sesame like does? This is such a big vague question. So tell me if it doesn't make sense. But like, what do you think Sesame does well with its female characters and the ones you play and Rosita and Abby, and obviously there's more now, but I know you haven't been on the show in a while. But like, what do you think? Hmm?
But I know it's changed
Yeah, it has.
immensely.
It's very different than the show that I watched when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s.
I should check it out one of these days, but when I left in 2014, I don't know. I just never looked back and then I
I
couldn't
get
find
it. I
it
mean,
because,
again, it was
yeah.
it was a part of again, it was a part of your life, and now it isn't, and that's okay. That's how life
Yeah,
is.
well, that is right. You move on.
Yeah,
What
we're
was I
just
going to
talking about like
say
what you
about
think they do well, like for girls watching at home.
right? Um, well, I think they have given the female characters much more. The word autonomy is popping up, but I'm not sure that's the right word for what I'm thinking about. They write solid situations for these female characters now, just like they would for the guys. So I think that's better. And then with Abby, they really got their act together and said, first of all, let's not make her orange. Let's her a color little girls like. So they made her lilac, and then they made her a fairy. It's just the way people start thinking differently as the years go by. So, and Leslie does a fantastic job with the character, and she's adorable, and she fits everything she offers as a puppeteer. That character is good for the show. That's, I guess,
Yeah,
what I'm
I
trying to
mean,
say.
I've
Male,
I've had the pleasure
female,
of meeting Leslie, a couple times, and it's amazing. Like, Abby is just such a perfect fit for her. Like, whether she's performing Abby or not, I feel like she acts and sounds the same.
Abby. She lives in
Yeah.
a dream world. She's very mature. I mean, she's not a young girl anymore, but she can bring that up and make Abby just a lovely little creature. And, she's got everything going for her. So I have to commend her, but it helped a little bit that she was
Yeah,
Violet and a fairy, Zoe was a monster. It's, they just, you learn. There's no way to know what you know in the 2000s that you should have thought about in the
sure.
1970s. There's it's just clear that
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
the
it's
way
it's
it
one of
was.
those things, and again, like on the show, this show, not Sesame Street, my show. I've been
Yeah.
looking back and going, like I said, really in depth. Like, you were laughing when I'm like, oh yeah, we talked a lot about Betty Lou last week, but like, I literally went back and found all of the old clips that had, you performing Betty Lou in
Oh,
them. And
hmm.
it's one of those things where hindsight is 2020. Like, it's one thing for me to look back and at this clip from 1971 and be like, I kind of wish Betty Lou had more to do. That was 54 years
Yeah.
ago. Like,
Right. It was amazing that there was even a female character on at all, but everything grows, changes. And now they've got a Japanese puppet and a African American puppet and his son and whatever. It
yeah,
goes on and on and on.
it's a different it's a
It's
different
like,
way of thinking about the show, just like you were even saying with like Abby being sort of like a different way of thinking about the show than Zoe.
what will what will appeal to little
Yeah.
girls, thinking like, what was I just gonna say? It's like cars, when you only know about horse and carriages or horses and buggies, and then somebody comes along and invents a car, this is, or like a plane, and now we send rockets and things up in the air, and it's evolution. That's all. It's just
But
evolution.
again, I really do want to commend, like I was saying, and like you were saying, the stuff is still so funny and so fun to watch from those early
Mhm.
days. And
Yeah.
again, you know, as I said at the beginning, with Prairie being my favorite, like, you are so funny when the scripts let you be. You are such a funny performer, and that was always something that I really appreciated about Prairie in particular.
Well, thank you. You're
Well,
very
thank you.
kind.
Do you have any, I guess, as we sort of start wrapping up, I don't want to take too much of your
Mhm.
time. Again, even as I said, I could go, I can go through Betty Lou clip by Betty Lou clip, but I think we're better off without that. But
Probably not to do,
do
that's
you
for
have
sure.
any
Yeah.
any like any advice? I mean, I guess the industry has changed so much since when you started, but like, do you have any advice to female puppeteers or anyone who might be listening? I mean, again, it's so different than it was in 1970, where you could just call up Jim's office and get Jim himself. But I don't know. It just felt like a good note to kind of end on.
Well, I know that there's like UConn, they supposedly have a very good puppetry program. I'm sure there must be other colleges that also, but also, people videotape themselves now for auditions and, to see what I've seen a few of them because I know they hire puppeteers sometimes because of tapes that people have sent in. And well, it used to be Kevin. I think Marty maybe does this now, looks at all of these tapes and sees who might be a good person to hire if they're looking for somebody. I think Ryan was found that way too, Ryan Dillon. I would say, today you have everything going for you. You can buy your lights, you can buy your camera, you can self-tape, you can write your own material and then get it out there. Put it up on YouTube. Tell people that it's on YouTube. I
Yeah, no,
don't
again, like I
know.
said, I know things have changed.
Generation, not at all. But I know there are ways just to put all that stuff up on YouTube and get it seen. They probably know 10 times better than I do how to get going. And everybody's journey is different. Mine was completely fluky, never wanted to be a puppeteer. All of that is it just I don't know, just luck and craziness. And, I really enjoyed my time being a puppeteer with that group, I might add. But then Jim died, and then, Frank left, and it changed a lot. It always does. If somebody leaves and somebody else comes in, I probably wouldn't even know half of the puppeteers now if I, went over to the studio. But I know they have a good group, so I hope the show goes on and on forever. It must be really hard to know even how to write for the show these days because things are
Yeah,
so
no, it's
different.
it's it's a struggle, and certainly, I hope to speak to some people who are currently on the show as well. I've spoken to
Yeah.
them outside of this podcast, but I hope to speak to them for this podcast as well. But any other last thoughts that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, the only thing that I was going to say is that I have always cheered for this show. I mean, I've always been not only proud that I was on it, but I still think it serves a fantastic um, it fills a need for a kid show that isn't stupid and silly and Barney-ish and all of that stuff. And I'm really glad that Sherry Weston has found a new home for it because it does teach kindness and smarter, stronger, kinder. Those are I think the three words that they use to the mission. The mission statement is smarter, kinder,
Yeah, yeah,
stronger. I think that's it. I won an
you
award
sure
not too
did. I
long
was going to
ago. This
congratulate
little,
you on that as well. You won a Lifetime Achievement Award at the last Emmys.
they looked around and said, geez, who can we get an
No,
award?
no, you deserved it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was very, very lovely and unexpected. But anyway, we're living in a very difficult time now where the leaders of our country are the opposite of being kind, caring, thoughtful. It's the opposite. So we really cannot let the country get sucked up in this
Yeah.
morass, word for him. Uh,
Good. I
and
don't have to bleep that one, so that's good.
No, sorry. But anyway, that's as long as it stays on the air, I have hope for humanity because we are a very divided country right now. So that's all. And I just hope it goes on and on and on, and they find even better writers and better directors and better puppeteers. they have to keep feeding the engine because the older people will soon retire or, just move on. I don't know. But that's it. I mean, I'm just a big cheerleader for the show.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. It really, like I said at the beginning, it means a lot. I really always loved your work, and it means a lot to talk to you about this stuff.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Well, good luck to you, whatever is your next step. Maybe you're at your last step. Oh, I don't
I
mean
was going to
that.
say,
That
no,
sounds awful.
I'm hoping it goes a little longer than this. I'm hoping it's not over
No.
at 34.
No. I'm delighted that you asked to speak with me, and it's been a
Thank
real
you so
pleasure.
much. Thank you.
Okay, and good luck.
I want to thank Fran so much for giving us an overview of the changing role of female characters on Sesame Street. I'm doing this super focused deep dive, and sometimes it's good to take the wide view of how this all fits together. Which is good because next week we're going back to specifics as we continue digging into the first 5 seasons of Sesame Street with a look at some lesser known female characters. Lesser known than Betty Lou? Yeah, baby. Get on my level.
And now, from a cozy sun-filled kitchen in Goat Corners, New Hampshire, it's time for the Answer Lady. And here she is, the lady with the answer to every problem Granny Fanny Nesselrode.
Where is she? Where is she?
Who, Granny?
You said the answer lady was here.
Well, she
I
is.
don't see her.
Granny, you are the answer lady.
Mercy me, heavenly pie. Oh, I forgot there, you silly.
Join us next week for Granny Fanny Nesselrode and friends on A Prairie Dawn Companion.
I really am quite remarkable.
A Prairie Dawn Companion is a production of ToughPigs.com. It is written, produced, edited, and hosted by Becca Petunia, and executive produced by the ToughPigs Muppet Fan Podcast executive producer, Joe Hennes. Thanks to Scott Hanson, Shane Keating, Tony Whitaker, and the whole Muppet Wiki team for helping me with research. The book Street Gang by Michael Davis was also indispensable. Thanks to Katilyn Miller, Michal Richardson, and Eli Lee for help with script revisions. Follow ToughPigs on social media. You can support us on Patreon or by buying a t-shirt on our TeePublic. Join the conversation on the ToughPigs Discord. You can support A Prairie Dawn Companion and lots of other podcasts too by giving Muppet Fan Podcasts with ToughPigs.com 5 stars on your podcast reviewing app of choice.
Ah!